Hello and welcome to another episode of the Business of Business podcast. I'm Roy. Thanks for being with us. We try to bring guests from all disciplines of business to help our solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, and small business listeners out there. So today we are grateful to have Roy Harmon. Roy, thanks for being with us. Roy is an experienced marketer with a demonstrated history of generating leads in the legal, political, automotive, higher education, software, and healthcare industries. His efforts have mobilized voters, enticed customers, and persuaded donors. Thanks so much for taking time out of your day to be with us. And how's everything going this morning?
Going good. Thanks for having me, and thanks for reading out that long bio. That's a mouthful.
You bet. No, it's impressive. I'm glad that, you've got a history across a lot of different industries, which that's always good to, kind of know. I guess we could translate some work in some things work in one industry, some in the other, but it's always good to learn from different environments like that. So
Yeah.
I guess we'll start with, kind of what got you into marketing and,
Yeah. So I started out, I actually went to law school,
okay.
and I thought I wanted to be a politician. And while I was in law school, I started doing political marketing, working with a consulting firm in South Carolina. And I worked for some campaigns, and I found that I liked the marketing side of things even more than the political side, and I certainly didn't want to be a lawyer. So I graduated from law school and never looked back. I moved to DC, worked for the National Rifle Association doing social media work. And after a couple of years, when my wife realized that we were going to have a baby, we decided we'd move back here to be closer to home. And I realized that it really wasn't the political marketing thing I liked. It was more the marketing thing.
Right.
So I got out of politics. And these days, I couldn't be happier that I got out of politics. It's a good time to not be involved.
You got that right. It's been brutal.
Yeah. So, so along the way, I worked for an automotive ad agency, some programmatic ad agency, but ended up in the software space, working with SaaS companies and then startups more generally. And it's exactly where I want to be. So even though it would have been nice not to have to pay back $100,000 in student loan debt.
Right.
Maybe I wouldn't be where I am if I hadn't if I hadn't had to do that.
Right. Well, I know that one thing that you focus on is lead generation, correct?
Right.
Yeah, and that's so important. So what are some things that you do, excuse me, for your current businesses that you work with? What are some, some methods that are really working for lead generation? I know, it's always changing. Used to, you could send out some emails and people would respond. And now I think, very few people check if they don't, really know the name in the header of the email. Usually you just get, deleted or pushed aside. So what are some things that are working?
Yeah, so the big focus is inbound marketing, and that's been the way to go. Honestly, even before digital, the best way to go was to offer people value and to be very focused on what does the buyer need at each stage of the buying process rather than what do you need.
Right.
Because you may need people to sign up for your email list, but that doesn't help them.
Right.
Well, maybe it does, but if it does, you need to make sure that it's going to help them, and you need to let them know how it's going to help them. And I think a lot of people kind of feel like, oh, I don't have time for inbound marketing, because they think inbound marketing means that you're just waiting around for search engine rankings.
Right.
But what I do and what I find to be most effective is to take those inbound marketing principles and then apply those in your advertising efforts as well. So you can still provide value through an ad, and that's where you're really able to supercharge those inbound efforts.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point. Inbound is just to me, inbound is on the buyer's time. If they need you at this point in time, because as salespeople, as marketing people, we have a need to make a transaction today, or we need we need the lead to come in today. But if you're not in the place to buy right this moment, um, you're not, nothing is going to happen. And so I guess I take it from on the other part, when we're doing outbound, if you're not interested, you could be a potential customer, but I could pester you so much that, um, I kind of turn you off. So I think that's a good distinction between the two, especially in this day and time. Outbound, I'm not going to say it doesn't work. A lot of people still swear by it, but um, it's gotten much, much more difficult. And I think if, I'm like you, if we focus on these inbound opportunities, I think we
Mm-hmm.
not only make better customers and have happier people, but we can also, it's easier to build a pipeline, would you say? Because just like I said, if you saw my ad, if I keep it in front of you, or whatever I'm doing to promote myself, if I keep in front of you and you're not ready today, you may not respond, but tomorrow, next week, in a month,
Right.
when you're ready, if I'm still, and that's the consistency of this, is that if I'm still doing it, you're like, hey, I've seen this guy's ad, or whatever I'm doing, and go ahead and reach out and get a hold of me.
Yeah, and the big thing that a lot of people sometimes miss is the value of just getting somebody into your funnel, getting them onto
Right.
your email list. So having some, for instance, if you're you say you're doing outbound sales, if you can get them to opt into something
Right.
instead of just going right for the sale, or if you have an ad and you know that this ad is being sent to a very broad base of potential customers, people who somewhat match your ideal customer profile, but they're not, you don't know that they're ready yet.
Right.
Well, rather than focus on, hey, get a demo when they may not be ready for a demo, focus on something that more people are going to be more likely to need or want, so that then they at least give you their email address, and then you have the ability to build a relationship with them, to send them more value through email.
Right.
And then instead of doing cold email, then you're doing warm email.
Right.
Then you've got them, you can use your marketing automation to see what are they doing on your website. And when they do visit your pricing page, for example, well, then you send that over to your sales team and you say, hey, these people are ready for you to
Right.
make a pick.
Yeah, I think that's important to monitor. Where what people are trying to gather from your website, so you can target your next contact to that, instead of just, and I probably beat this to death on this show, but instead of the, hey, you called me last week, or I saw you hit our website, are you ready to buy yet? And that just, I still get that today, and it just kind of, it irks me a little bit. It's like, let's build this relationship. And, I
Mhm.
believe in value, that we need to provide value instead of just, hey, are you ready? Because if they were ready to buy, they would have called us already. We wouldn't have to be reaching
Right.
out to them. So, even if we're doing those drip email campaigns, it's to, to educate them. Hey, I saw this. This might be important for you, or, this is the other thing about having those conversations, is we can
Mhm.
hear what's important, so we can say, hey, I heard you mention this, or uh, like you said, you were on our webpage. But uh, one thing I was going to ask you to do before we get too deep, though, is back up. You mentioned marketing funnel, and just for people that may not really understand exactly what that has to, what the components of that, could you just go over that quickly?
Sure. So the idea is that, just like a funnel, you've got your people at the top of the funnel, where it's a pretty broad group of people, and then by the end of the funnel, you're going to have less, so it gets narrow. So you've got your top of the funnel, which, if you subscribe to HubSpot's explanation of the buyer's journey, then the top of the funnel is where they're starting to realize they have a problem. They're starting to maybe look up, what is this weird growth on my face, something like that. And then in the middle of the funnel, they're actually starting to research things that they can do. This is a consideration stage, what they call it. And then finally, there's the bottom of the funnel, which is where they're trying to make a decision about who I'm with, what I'm ready to make a purchase. And that's how people are talking about it for forever. So talk about the flywheel now. And I don't know if they'll have much success with that because the funnel's been around forever.
Yeah. Yeah, and that the little bit I've heard about the flywheel effect is basically it's that once, I guess, a little effort and momentum to get the flywheel turning, the less effort it keeps to make it turning faster and faster.
And it's a good illustration. And I don't think it's actually original to them. I think it's really just they had so much success owning the term inbound marketing.
Yeah.
I mean, that is, if you look up inbound marketing, HubSpot's coming up.
Okay.
And I think they realize that it's harder to own the funnel maybe, so they want to flywheel. In fact, they probably own the funnel too. At this point, if you want an example of marketing that works for them, but could not work for anybody, for most people, HubSpot writes about everything these days. They're going to start writing about sports scores probably before long, because they're writing about things that are so out there from what they do, just because they've got the budget, they've got the marketing automation in place, that they don't care how high up you are in the funnel. If you do anything involving marketing or sales, they want to get you in, and then they know that they can convert you eventually.
Yeah. I think that speaks basically to the power of content as well. And I guess that their theory is that if I'm not searching for CRMs or, and they do a lot more than the CRM, but I do use them for that. But if you're not searching for their particular product, if you're reading something else they're writing about, then they can, they make that connection where, at least you start having some name recognition. So I think, let's talk a little bit about the importance of content and good content in this whole process.
Yeah, it's huge, and it's really, you can see if you start out with maybe some thin content. I worked with a company called Fusion Web Clinic, and when I started out there was content that was clearly designed to check those boxes of, here, let's talk about the problem. Here, let's talk about some solutions. Let's try to rank for this keyword. But they were all very short. They were very unoriginal. And so nothing was really happening.
Yeah.
Then as soon as we started to create this content that spoke to each stage of the buyer's journey, multiple personas, multiple decision makers, influencers, different people who would be potentially making a decision, we saw huge growth. Obviously we were doing other things as well, but we made a huge focus on content marketing, and the ARR went up by 245% over the course of the year as we were building out this content and then marketing the content based on the buyer's journey. So instead of just saying, let's find some broad Facebook audience and send all our content to that, we would have a broad audience that was people who we thought they may be a good fit. Yeah. Then we'd have another campaign within that would be remarketing only to people who had actually visited our website. Okay. And then within that, remarketing for people who had visited the website, but then also our consideration stage content. So we knew they were a little deeper. And then once they went to our pricing page or signed up for a demo or things like that. Then we knew, okay, let's start really promoting our product in the ads. Let's start pushing them to sign up for a demo, or push them to get on a phone call, discovery call, whatever.
Right.
And so that's where the advertising comes in. So the content is key, but it's it's, especially these days, SEO is just getting harder and harder. Google is giving more and more space to ads, and less space to organic results. So you really have to focus on these that you can get eyeball content, and that's where Facebook ads, search ads, all these different platforms, they give you a great opportunity to do that. And if you use the buyer's journey and you create your content in a way that's buyer-centric and focused on giving value to your prospects, it's all going to fit together in a way that's going to increase your sales velocity, because you're educating people as they go. You're getting people who are, when they're actually ready to buy. And then you're also generating more demand. So it's gonna help you out at every level.
Yeah, and since that content stays out there, depending on where we post it, it lives, basically forever. It will keep working for you. And I think one thing that we had talked about, the other day, is that the other nice thing about the inbound and doing this is that we can not only meet the buyer at the stage of the journey that they're at, but we can meet them at the time of day where they're at too. And, we were talking
Right.
I was working kind of late the other night, and then doing a little Christmas shopping. And so, it's like 10:30. I'm on somebody's website looking at something or reading this or that. And so if we have that content out there, and we have a really good inbound program, that works 24 hours a day, versus, if I would have gotten a sales phone call at 10:30 at night from this company, I probably wouldn't have been too happy with them. But,
Right.
or, could they have hit me with an email at that right time? So, that, and it needs to be a combination. I get that, but this is the importance of building that base with this, the inbound portion, can work for you 24 hours a day.
Right.
The other thing that you mentioned, Facebook and ads, is it's important to know where your customer lives. I guess, trying to build back in the day, I don't know if they still say this, but build the an avatar of your customer. Who are they? Where do they hang out? Because, and it changes. It's changed a lot. I think that, 10 years ago, there was a younger crowd on Facebook, and I think because of all the parents and grandparents that are on there, I think some kids in the last few years, they kind of moved away from it. But then now I heard from
exodus to TikTok.
Yeah, it's all their TikTok. But I heard from another younger person, 22, 23, the other day, that maybe that they're starting to come back to Facebook again. So it's always changing, but the point is that you really need to sit down and figure out where these people live. And we were just looking up some stats on Pinterest yesterday, and it's incredible, like 70%, 80% women are who use that. And then, all these different platforms, they can tell you who their main groups are. They can tell you education, income, a lot of information if you'll just research it.
I mean, and that's a great point as far as the research goes, because you never know really until you do the research or even actually run a test. And just as an example, so Pinterest is primarily female, but at the same time, depending on what you're doing, and maybe you're looking for a new opportunity because you've got all the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
It could potentially work. Just as an example, I know my father-in-law gets on Pinterest all the time because a lot of people put home improvement projects on.
Okay.
And they'll build a deck or a fire pit,
Right.
and they'll have that on there. But then it kind of goes back. You got to prioritize. You usually want to start out with something like Google search. If there's going to be buyer intent out there, that's the best place to go. Go ahead and scoop that up.
Yeah.
But really, eventually, you get to the point where as you're building this lead generation machine and nurturing the leads and closing leads, well, eventually you get to the point where it's okay. We need more leads.
Yeah.
It's kind of like once you have to get out in the oil sands to get more oil. When you're pumping it all out of the ground, but now it's worthwhile
Right.
to go out and get it out of the sand. That might make sense to you as being from Texas. I don't know if everybody will get that reference, but it gets to the point where it makes sense to go somewhere where it's harder to get them.
Yeah.
Because at that point, that's where you have to go for growth.
Yeah, basically, it just costs you a little bit more to extract it and it's harder to, you have to work a lot harder to find those leads once you get to that point. But yeah, you're right about that. So, and that's the other thing I kind of lost my train of thought, but just thinking that, these are always our strategies and processes we always need to be looking at updating, because we can't just, everything is not just always the same. Things are changing. Like you said, if we've pulled low-hanging fruit from one place, then we have to kind of look around to see, what is that next stop for us. And that's where, really having a plan, and it being, a plan is not like a railroad track with no room to move. I mean, you have to be able to revise it to keep it up to date. So, that's an important aspect of this as well.
Yeah, the marketing is definitely not an industry where you can sit back and relax.
Right. Yeah, because once you, my opinion is, once you push a campaign out there, you almost have to, rethink this. Maybe not quite for the very next one, but pretty soon you have to start really rethinking, what is our next step here. And you can't just keep doing the same thing over and over and over and expect to continue to grow.
Right. Well, and then they're going to keep coming out with new channels. There'll be new social media platforms for tweeners to dance on, and all kinds of crazy things coming out. Who knows what'll be next, but you've got to be ready to leverage those opportunities and try. I mean, and I've been fortunate to have a lot of clients who've been willing to experiment, like when Snapchat geofilters first came out, those sponsored geofilters. I actually had a Lexus dealership group that was willing to do that and have a sponsored geofilter. And, you find out in a lot of cases that didn't work for them.
Right.
But it was very, we did it in a very controlled way, and having those kind of pilot programs and trying things out, that's the way to really get ahead.
Right.
Once you've got your groundwork in place and you're actually profitable, you can start trying to be the one to find the next big thing and try to get ahead of your competitors, rather than just being neck and neck, or if you happen to be the Pepsi to somebody else's Coke, you need to be really on alert for new ways to get ahead.
Yeah, and that's a good point too, that we need to think about, as we're looking at the different channels and we're looking at content, and you just have to think about all the noise out there already, and the people that are in your same space that, are bombarding consumers with the same information, basically. And it's like, how do you differentiate yourself? Another thing, talking about content, is pictures. Pictures, videos. Be sure and implement them in your strategies, because I've always been told that you can write a text. Let's just say you're doing a post on a Facebook. You can do text, it's all right, but if you put a picture on that, it's like leaving breadcrumbs. And if you do a video, it's like leaving chocolate covered breadcrumbs. So it, it just enhances it. somebody pointed out to me not long ago too that not only is it just does it kind of the algorithms work better for you, but you just take up more space too. If you think about your little text box versus the picture and how it
Right.
widens out that space to get somebody's attention. So they're just all those little things that we always need to remember, to try to stand out. And another, I guess I'll pose this as a question, but what I always try to tell people to do is be authentic with those pictures and with the videos, and to make them of yourself, of your company, of your equipment, of your stuff, where people can get to know you. People want to buy from people that they like, people that they trust, people that they feel they relate to. And so if if you're a big dog lover and you have a dog, it's always good to put in there, because dog lovers will relate to that. But so, as again, I'm kind of posing that as a question. That's kind of been the theory for me up to this point. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think authenticity is great, and part and parcel of that is having a personality, having a real, trying to be unique in your brand and not do what everybody else is doing. One of my clients is actually a more serious product for basically for large resellers of basically it's for like huge IT companies. But the CEO of the company is a funny guy. He likes to joke around. And what they're doing is they're replacing something that's very sort of an old way of doing things, where people will copy and paste things back and forth from Microsoft Word and Excel. And now they're doing this, they're automating it.
Okay.
And so since this guy's a funny guy, and he was another one of the clients I've had where I've been lucky that they're willing to try things, we must have done like 30 or 40 social media posts that were black and white graphics instead of color, because everybody else is doing color graphics and usually pictures of their product, which
Right.
I don't, to me, software product isn't that interesting to look at. So we had black and white pictures, and they were old pictures, like real pictures, and then we just would do stuff with them and write something funny on them. And the engagement was huge. And people would see them and ask about them, so it makes people, they're able to relate to your brand. And even if they're not funny people, or they're not, whatever your personality is, it lets them know that you're a real person, or at least it feels as though, your company is made up of real people. And that's going to give them a lot more of a warmer feeling towards your brand.
Yeah, and that's a huge evolution. Back in the day when the internet started, it was button up, professional, don't let your personality show through. And I think that's one thing that has been a positive evolvement, is that, we're getting to know the people behind the business people, which, that's awesome. Because like I said, we want to do business with like people, and we want to do business with people we like. So it's always good to, because I was working with the company long ago that was redoing their website, and they had a bunch of these stock photos. And I'm like, just make it personal. Take some pictures of the CEO, the staff. They have a lot of trucks and equipment in a warehouse. Take pictures of that. People would be interested to see how kind of the behind the scenes. So important part.
Have you heard that story about oh gosh, now I'm not going to be able to remember his name. Is the Science of Advertising guy. Anyway, he was like a genius advertiser way back when, and he started to figure out how to like measure different advertising and things like that. But he went to the Schlitz brewery, and they were showing him out around the brewery, and they said, "You see, we triple distill this, and we clean these, 3 times a day, and we do this and we do that." And he said, "Well, that's your advertisement right there." And they're like, "Why? Everybody does that." And he says, "Yeah, but they don't show people. People don't know that they do."
Right.
And so it's like these things that seem totally run of the mill to you.
Right.
You can go and actually highlight those and say, "Look what we do."
Yeah. Yeah, and there's some geeks like myself, I'm admitted that, I always want to know what's behind the curtain. I want to know how things work. So it's of some interest just to, do a pan of the brewery. And I don't know, there used to be a couple here around in Texas that, they had tours because, well, I think the adults went there because they gave them free samples, but the kids loved it because you got to see all the cool gauges and everything else. So,
Yeah.
and again, it's just being different. It may not work for you in your business, your industry, but, I think there's things that we need to try to be a little different. And that kind of brings up one thing I meant to ask you earlier was, the importance of A/B testing, and not, if you have $1,000 ad budget, you don't just have an idea and just lay it all out there and do one thing. But can you talk a little bit about the importance of A/B testing?
Yeah, so I've got a little bit of a maybe not an unorthodox opinion on A/B testing.
Okay.
So when it comes to A/B testing, I think that it's so difficult to reach the sample size that you would need to reach to get meaningful results. And there are so few opportunities to actually do that in a way that's not going to lead to sample pollution.
Okay.
Like, for instance, if you run a Google ad, and I remember when I was working at an ad agency, they were like, you have 2 ads for every single one.
Right,
and I would say, well, okay. And so then the ad, we'd get to the point where we got 100 impressions. And I'd say, and they'd say, why are you still running this ad when you got 100 impressions? And this one is 1.1% click-through rate, and this one is 1%. Well, it's like one other person clicks the next click, and all of a sudden it's like flipped the other way.
Right.
And so I think that there are definitely times where A/B testing is important. But for most people, depending on the size of your budget, the sophistication of your team and what they can do as far as data analysis, you really have to think hard about what are you going to get results that are actionable. Because if you run, for instance, a display campaign, and you don't know for sure whether people saw both, for instance. I mean, so maybe they click one more than the other, but you don't know that they only saw the other one.
Right.
And it's very hard to have a control group really in any kind of digital advertising, or some website tools make it a little bit easier, but even there, they typically rely on cookies. So if somebody deletes their cookies, then, so that I guess I'm a little skeptical about the idea.
Yeah.
I know that most people look for it. So you kind of sometimes just have to do it because that's what people want to see.
Yeah.
And then also there are people smart, there's people smarter than me who say, I've heard people say both things. So I want to think that'll matter. But at the same time, I think you really have to make sure that you're not just spinning your wheels, because especially for smaller companies with smaller budgets, you've got to make the most out of every minute, every dollar. So, it's just, I think, something to be really thoughtful about.
Yeah. Well, and maybe that's the thing is if the smaller teams, maybe just to put a lot more thought in before you launch the campaign may be the way to go then, instead of doing the A/B testing. Yeah, because I never really thought about that as, did I see both ads and one drew me in, or did I only see one? I may have, if I'd seen the other, I may have still clicked on it too. So yeah, that's a pretty good argument against that as well. All right, Roy. Well, thanks so much for being here, taking time out of your day to be with us. What is a tool that you use in your daily life, either your professional or personal life, either a tool, a habit, something that you do every day that you just couldn't do without?
I really like free writing. And so it's, this idea that you write and you don't let yourself stop to edit yourself, and you don't do it. You just write and you don't stop.
Okay.
And so a lot of times I'll do that just to do it. But I, especially if I have a problem, I'll do it. And I actually, I made a free tool that I use to help me with it, where it turns off where I can't even see when I'm typing,
Oh, wow.
so that I can just go, and I'm a little bit less likely to try to like go and backspace on a typo, because I can't see the typo to even know if I'm fixing it or not.
Interesting.
And it's helped me solve problems. It's helped me come up with ideas. So I would say, like, for people who need to be innovative or creative or just need to solve problems, I would say do free writing. And there's all kinds of Accidental Genius is a short book on it, but you can find out how to do it for free all over the internet.
Okay.
And then and there's actually a really good book called Inside the Box that's unrelated to free writing, but all about innovation and creativity. So I'll just throw that out there.
Okay. Yeah, because I spend most of my time backspacing to correct my misspelled words. So that'd be good for me.
I don't like my, and it's really hard for me to do that.
Right.
But I do it.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks again for taking time to be with us. So tell us, before you go, who is your client, what you can do for them, and of course, how they can reach out and get a hold of you.
Yeah, so I work for generally startup companies, SaaS companies, anybody who's typically in the earlier stages of trying to figure out how do we generate leads, or people who are in that middle stage, or even they've been around for a while and they just aren't getting the results that they want, or they feel like things are inefficient, or their just pipeline isn't full enough. So generally software companies, but I just pitched a game company the other day, so we'll see. I find that the principles are just they cross so many industries, as like I've seen in all these different industries that I've worked in.
Right.
And so my company's called Advertoscope, and so I write about lead generation there, and I've got a free sales funnel template on there that they can get without even downloading. It's just something that I have there on the website without an email or anything like that. So
okay.
I'd love to see people on Advertoscope.com, and I've had a great time talking to you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you bet. And we'll be sure and include all that in the show notes as well. Great. All right. Until next, and we'll try to get you back on. Like I said, this is always evolving. So in the short period of time, we'll get you back on here and kind of get some updates and go over. There's so much stuff to cover. We could talk for hours and hours, but we'll get you back and do a follow up. All right.
Sounds great. I'd love to come.
Yep. All right. Well, everybody, thanks a lot for listening. Again, y'all can find us at www.thebusinessofbusinesspodcast.com. We're also on all the major platforms: iTunes, Google, Stitcher, Spotify. If we're not on the platform that you use, please reach out. We'll be glad to get it added. Also, be sure and share with your friends. And we always look for topics that people are having some issues with. So don't hesitate to email or get with us on social media. Let us know some things, some pain points that you may be having, that we could find some guests to get on and help you out. Until next time, take care of yourself.